So welcome to Ask the Expert. We're here today to ask the expert, Mark Sobel, about the increase in city wage taxes for non-resident Philadelphia employees. Mark Sobel is a shareholder at Drucker and Scaccetti, also known as the Tax Warriors. Mark, I read a couple of weeks ago that Philadelphia has increased the city wage tax on non-resident employees. What are the new rates and when does that start?
Well, the new rates are effective July 1st, and for a non-resident, it's 3.5019%. Pretty specific. Now, what's important right now is for most non-residents, there will not be a city wage tax obligation. The city actually came out with an announcement clarifying their position. Generally, if a person is working inside, a non-resident is working inside the city, the non-resident is subject to city wage tax. In certain circumstances, the non-resident can avoid that city wage tax. The city of Philadelphia has what's called a requirement of employment standard. That is, if your employer requires you to be at a location outside the city, a non-resident can exempt their wages from city wage tax. A simple example being an IT engineer whose office is in downtown, but there's a client in, say, Conshohocken or Bala Cynwyd. The engineer has to go to the client's place of business outside the city to do the software work or whatever technical work needs to be done. That non-resident can exempt their wages that day from city wage tax. Now, it's important that if the employer required you to do that, and that's what's happened with this COVID-19 situation, that the city and state have closed down. The employers are requiring their employees not to work in the city. So for a non-resident can be exempt. That's not for a resident. A resident is still subject to the city wage tax, regardless of this COVID-19 situation. So in a nutshell, that's what's going on right now.
Okay, so that means technically, I typically would work in the city, but then I go home and I live in New Jersey. That city wage tax is exempt because the company's been shut down, everybody's been pushed out to their homes, and we don't have to pay that city wage tax at all. What happens if it's still showing up in the paychecks? What do we do? How do we handle that?
Well, your employer should have stopped withholding that city wage tax for a non-resident. If the employer had not stopped withholding, the employee can still get the money back. They'll have to file a separate refund claim next year after their W-2 has been issued, and it'll show that the withholding was that there was incorrect withholding on the city wage tax. Now, the other side to that, now you mentioned you're a New Jersey person, I am too, we love to pay real estate taxes, don't we? Is that you probably received a credit on your New Jersey tax return for the city wage taxes which you paid. Now, if you're not going to be paying that city wage taxes, that credit on your New Jersey personal return is going to go away. So you really, not only do you make sure your city withholding has stopped, you should have New Jersey withholding taken out because you're no longer going to have that credit. Pennsylvania and New Jersey have a reciprocity agreement. Each state taxes their persons as to where they reside, not where they work. So I think there's two things: make sure there's no more city withholding coming out, and review your personal situation if you have as you may need to have taxes paid to New Jersey.
Okay, that's interesting. So for New Jersey residents, technically, we could probably still take the city wage tax out then, rather than make that shift.
But there's no obligation for the employer to withhold. The employer is not required to withhold anymore.
Ah, okay, all right. So the employer would make that shift on our payroll tax then, or should?
I would be talk to your payroll department, see what they're doing. Presumably notices have come out, and the employee should be aware of what's happening.
Okay. All right, Mark, I appreciate you taking this time on Ask the Expert today. And Mark Sobel from Drucker and Scaccetti, again, also known as the Tax Warriors, we appreciate you taking this time to answer some tax questions on the new city wage tax. I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Rick, appreciate the opportunity.